There's some hot topics out there in golf news right now, and then we're going to cover them today. Who would that be? Xander Schauffele making some news. Paul Azinger also out there making news, along with our good friend Keith Pelley at the DP World Tour. And then a series of guys that were very interesting. Lando Griffin had some very interesting things to say to the press. You're not familiar with that name, but Lando is a card-carrying PGA Tour player. I don't rank. Well, maybe we'll get that from Darkstar. And Jimmy Walker, former major champion, getting a little bit older now, just lost his card, unfortunately for Jimmy. And that ties in with Lanto's comments. And we might mention, if we get time, to get to Blain Barber. Starting with Xander Schauffele, who came out just this past few days and said, to the effect, I would like Jay Monahan to be gone. If he could just go away, that'd be great. Don't trust him. And why would I, right? Of course, why would he? But what I know you had some interesting points about Xander, and we can go on and on and on about that. We'll try to keep it tight. But what did you see in Xander's comment?
Well, the first thing, that's the Jay wanting Jay gone leads to all of his other points. He wants to be a world golfer. They want massive change. They want to have a season. There's not one single PGA Tour guy out there who doesn't want to have an actual 6-month season. And they still want to have time to go over and play in other events. He also mentioned the Ryder Cup, the locker room. There were no problems. But anybody who's played sport and been in a locker room, you really don't want the cameras in the locker room. That was just the whole point of that. Yeah. And eventually they let the locker room, Netflix in the locker room, and probably Jay and the PGA Tour is like, hey guys, we gotta do whatever we can to promote our tour. Lots of things like that. The one thing also that I found most interesting right at the end, distance. He wants to be able to spend 3-4 months in the weight room to pick up distance, because as he feels, and as most of the guys feel, the entire winning is all about distance. You don't care if it's in the rough. There's no more trees on any of these courses. You just have to knock it down there so you can hit those little wedges from 90 yards to, 10 feet and make birdies, because they've turned it into a birdie fest. The Kevin Kistners that we love to talk about have no chance of winning anymore.
Yeah, the trees have been relocated to a carbon offset ranch somewhere in Poland, we're told. If you're enjoying the Thinking Man Show, be sure to like this video. That helps us. That helps us with YouTube get the video to more people. I thought that was interesting about distance. So bomb and gouge is just the thing. It's the way to play. If you can hit it 330, move it down there and hit from 100 yards or 150 or in, and your competitors like Kevin, our buddy, or all the shorter players really, they don't. A 7-iron versus a 9-iron, a pitching wedge versus an 8-iron. It's procs. It's procs and where you putt from. And statistically, if you're putting from 10, 12, 15 feet, you're way, way ahead of the guys putting from 25 feet.
And there's also, you got to look at the courses. There's always 2 or 3 holes that the big hitters take it over some tree or dog leg and have a flip wedge in. And the guys like Kistner, I have 200. Yeah. I'm hitting Kistner. A utility wood, and they're hitting a wedge.
We're got to get Kevin on the show. We love Kiz, and we know that we assume that you wake up at these tournaments and you're like, I have no chance. I mean, I might as well have an extra margarita the night before. I can't move the ball down there 320. And all these younger guys all play like that, for sure. So with Paul Azinger, so much maligned. You want to say something else about Xander? We can circle back to Xander.
Just real quick, the last couple quick things on Xander. He could care less who the Ryder Cup captain is when they asked him about Tiger. I thought that was interesting, leading into the fact that he also doesn't care that the TGL is being postponed because he wants more time off. So that wraps up Xander, those last two quick
I thought that
things.
Did come across, whether intentional or totally unintentional, that comment about Tiger being the captain of the next Ryder Cup. And Xander saying, I don't care who it is. It doesn't really matter to me who it is what he said.
Yeah.
That was surprising.
Odd. That was odd in the sense that it was the interviewer teed it up for him to put the pom-poms on because they're all following Tiger. And Xander's like, no.
He was supposed to say, yeah, that'd be awesome. Tiger would be the greatest captain. Awesome. And he did. He went the other way. He's like, it doesn't really matter. We could have a potted plant there. That's how he answered. So I took that as My brain said that's a slight at Tiger. I don't know why. He's in the TGL. I don't know.
That's why I wanted to throw it in. It seemed like a slight at
It
TGL
was.
and Tiger.
I think if you
and
don't blow sunshine at Tiger, Tiger takes that as offense. I agree with you.
And that
100%.
just summarized that he could take or leave TGL too.
I thought
Actually, he said he was kind of forced. Tiger asked, he had to say yes. So
gotcha. Zinger. Moving on. Zinger took a lot of heat, or has taken a lot of heat in all the broadcasts he's done lately. He was the prime color analyst for NBC Golf for the last 5 years, I think is the number, and he's gone. So the interesting part of that to me is that here we were 1 year ago, almost exactly, on this show, talking about the other moves that they had made. They got rid of Roger Maltby. They got rid of Gary Koch, the voice of golf. Roger Maltby, are you kidding? And Liv didn't hire him. Liv, wow. That was a big miss, I thought. A huge miss. It would have been great with Faraday. I get you want young and all that, but Maltby's hilarious. I mean, I think that cuts across generations, but that's just my opinion. But Zinger's out.
Yeah.
So why is Zinger out? So they didn't give any reason. There was a secondary story that said
there were a couple hit pieces that talked about how Paul's made some mistakes and he was unprepared, and I did not think those were very accurate. They were kind of taken out of context. You're in the booth, and you can't see that he hit it in the water, or he hit it in the trees, or the putt's going here, or the putt's going there. So there were a couple hit pieces out, no question about it. And that's what I see. They're going to bring in. They're going to copy.
You're not even going to make it there. You're falling apart already. I can see you're emotional about Zingers being dished off. It's money. It's money, Dark Star. It's money. Stop opining about all these other reasons. They're getting rid of the expensive guy, and they're bringing some nobody. And yeah, he'll be younger for sure. But Paul's not worth it. So get rid of him. Keith Pelley, the next item on our list. The head of the DP World Tour, European Tour, had probably the most interesting comments relative to what's really important right now in golf audience. And that Keith basically said just 4 or 5 days ago, at the tail end of the the DP World Championship there in Dubai last week, I really want to see this deal happen with PIF. That'll be great. And it's going to happen, basically, is what he said. He was cheerleading the deal with PIF and Nuco, the head of the European Tour, because they're in the deal. Easy to kind of overlook that, but they're part of the deal. And anything that's bringing $1 billion into the game of golf, where we have no money here in Europe anymore because nobody watches over there, really nobody watches there, is awesome. So it's yet another favorable sign for the deal. But the deal has never been in doubt here on Thinking Man Show because it's rational. It makes sense on every level that it'll happen. And we do go back and watch the show on, if we've done it here, or it was on the podcast. It might have been just on the podcast for our Inner Circle. I think maybe that's right, Dark Star. So the Inner Circle knows something that this audience does not know, which is about the Fenway Sports Group. Go over and get that. That's on the podcast. Sorry, we can't talk about that here, but it's on the podcast. That was a great point. Fenway Sports Group relative to the deal with PIF and Nuco, etc. Then there's this Lando Griffin story, which I really enjoyed reading because Lanto is, and maybe his rank, Dark Star. You can look it up while I'm talking here for a second. But Lanto is a card carrying. He's in the top 125 on the PGA Tour, working his tail off, etc., making a nice living, but working hard and always no safety net. Right? There's no contract. I'm nervous every year. This is a lot of stress on me and my playing career, and I'm doing my best and I'm keeping my card and all this stuff. And then the whole point of his story and why it made golf news, he's been out of shape, I think, is a nice way of putting it, because it's a family-friendly show. We could use other words. He is very bent out of shape about how the PGA Tour has changed, particularly how they award FedEx Cup points. So now the signature events, in a nutshell, the signature events, these elevated events, that are no cut, small fields, only the top guys, 70, I believe it is, 70 or 78. Those points are triple the regular events. So there's, as we said here on this show from the get-go, when the PGA Tour released these elevated events and signature events, there's 2 tours now. There's the PGA Tour, which is the signature events. That's their marquee players. That's where all the energy is going to be. It's only going to become more so if they keep doing them that way. We'll see what NUCO has to say about how that's structured, but that's going to continue with NUCO as well, because that ties into Liv's model, right? So that's the new top tier PGA Tour. And then there's minor league golf. And minor league golf is everything else. The Korn Ferry is now minor league golf. Then the regular PGA Tour is just minor league. So Lanto, great name, Lanto, by the way, Lando Griffin, I love it, is dead on. And he makes the point. He said, look, I'm going to go play in Torrey Pines, which is, a great event on the PGA Tour every year. It was the AT&T for a long time. I don't know who's sponsoring Torrey this year, but maybe it is AT&T. It's a big event. There's going to be 150 guys there, 156. I'm going to play in that. And if I get fifth place, I get 100 points, FedEx Cup points. Well, Rory's going to go play the following week at, I guess, Riviera is what he was talking about, in L.A. Yeah, it had to be Riviera. Yep. The Genesis, that's a signature event. If he finishes fifth there, he gets 300 points. What? And that isn't cool with me, is what Lanto said. He used other words, more colorful words, in fact. But he's right. He's right. Yes, but we're not surprised here, Lanto. The tour is sacrificing you for them. There's a shocker. Yeah. Hasn't Phil been saying that since day one? Yes, you're a peasant. We're all peasants in this game, and the aristocracy is doing it for their benefit. Yes, that's how it works. And if you're in that group, awesome. You're getting showered with money. Your schedule is better. You have more time off. All this on the PGA Tour because of the live threat. And now NUCO, the new sheriff's coming to town. Yes, that's how it has played out. And Lanto has noticed. And it ties into a couple other stories like the Blain Barber story and the Jimmy Walker story. But Darkstar, what did you take? What's your take on the Lanto statements, really?
Well, the first thing is, yes, they've now decided there is clearly a proletariat and a bourgeoisie. And if you're Lanto, exactly opposite of what all the upper players, the bourgeoisie, have been saying. We want a shortened season. So now if you're part of the aristocracy, and it's a great time to be part of the aristocracy in golf, you get a shortened season, you get time off. Now if you're Lanto, you have to finish in the top 70 to not have to be forced to go and play in the Hit and Giggle, Fortnite, Wine Country Open, and they just had the ABC Open, or the RSM. We're just going to call that one the ABC.
The Alphabet Open.
The Alphabet
They have
Open.
a lot of alphabet tournaments.
So you are now forced to play year around to keep your card and try to get any status. Mm-hmm. And then even if you get in that 71st to 125, when you show up at an event that has a cut, you're getting a third. I actually didn't understand it because it does not register with me that, let me get this straight, they're going to play in a limited field event with no cut and get 3 times the FedEx Cup points. Wow!
Yeah, you don't run to a microphone for nothing. Yeah, Lanto went out of his way. He's made some enemies. I mean, PGA Tour headquarters doesn't like to see this stuff.
He called out JT, and obviously JT
not in a personal way, but he referenced him and said, "Look, he had a bad
referenced
season."
him, and he referenced Morikawa, and I think the real reference there is, I got to believe if I'm part of the bourgeoisie now in at the upper levels of golf, yeah, it's hard because I would struggle to focus on my game if I'm listening to some guy like he's out there trying to make a living. Remember, Lando Griffin's, I can't remember. I think he's like 44 now or something. The Jimmy Walker's 44. I'm sorry, but
no, Lanto was 35, right around.
Yeah, Lanto's 35, but he's made $7 million total in his career. Now, at a signature event, you play in 2 signature events, you could make that, and that's just, it's crazy to even think. The difference in points and money, basically now, if you're not in the top 70, yes, you're not on the PGA Tour, and that's that's
crazy. It bleeds into Jimmy Walker's comments. So Jimmy, back in September, Walker, who won the PGA championship, and for a couple of years there, about 5-6 years ago, was really
he won it,
doing
I think,
well.
in 16, and then he got Lyme disease. So
Yeah,
he's
he
had a
yes.
legitimate injury.
Yes, and that was talk about bad luck, unlucky on steroids.
Right.
So his comment in September was, "Hey, I just locked up my tour card for the next year for 24, but I didn't because you guys have moved the goalposts. It used to be at the end of the Wyndham. After that tournament,
it was at the end of the Wyndham, the top 125.
The top 125 on the money list." Go get their tour card, full privileges on the tour, the top 125. Well, they changed that this year, and now it's not that. It's at the end of the RSM. So the fall events now, guys are hammering it out in the rat race to try to get their cards. And Jimmy was 124th after the Wyndham. So hey, last year that would have been awesome. This year, no. So he was very bent out of shape. Again, another guy bent out of shape, which ties into Lanto, that he wasn't done, and he had to go play all this past fall in those 5 tournaments to try to retain his ranking at least at 125 or above, or below, and he didn't. Above, and he didn't. He failed right into the RSM, so he finished outside the 125, and now has to go and find other ways to play, which he will, but it's not the same as having full status. Right. So yet another guy who's been out of shape.
Right. And in his whole comment, why were you even caring about, why were they even mentioning the top 125? Because it's really all about the top 70. The fact that I'm scratching and clawing to be 124th was completely irrelevant. And they've turned these hit and giggle fall events into essentially a Q school. So now, as I said, if you're Jimmy Walker and you're 44, you got to play year round. You have to play golf year around. No time off to keep your card. To keep your job.
Or play better in the main season. It's just, I understand his point. And Malnati, Peter Malnati, who's on the policy board, who is 36 years old and didn't have much of a season, I don't believe. Charlie Hoffman didn't have a great season either. He lost his card, also on the policy board. But Malnati was quoted as basically saying in the Lanto story, we'll tie it to Jimmy, that's just the way it is. Sorry. We changed the rules and we told everybody, and that's just the way it is. And interestingly, Malnati did not say that when they first came out with the signature events, but then miraculously changed his tune, and now he's all for the signature events. Odd, or not so odd, but that happened. So the PGA at the top is singing with one hymn book, "This is the way we're going," and sorry, all you peasants. And the Blain Barber story sort of ties into that. Let's touch on Blayne for like 1 second, but do you want to add anything on Jimmy Walker?
No, go ahead.
So Blayne Barber was in the news because was he the guy that shot 82? Is that him?
Yes. Worst round ever.
He goes out and he's got a chance to get his card at Q School. He's at Q School. He's coming off the Corn Ferry, and he's 28, I think, 28, 29 years old. So he's starting to get a little late in sports, any pro sport. In your late 20s, you're sort of, if you haven't made it already. But he's there. He's got a chance, and he goes out, and his first round in this, I think it was the second Q School stage, he shoots his worst competitive round that he can remember, probably ever, 82, cards in 82, and he's basically out of the tournament after the first round. And he said it was his. Yeah, he said it was his worst round ever, and he's out of the tournament, and he starts lamenting on, this is it for me. He comes out on Twitter and says, I'm done. I gave it my best shot. In any other sport, 28, you're certainly well past your prime. And in golf, you're still in your prime. Well, it ties into these other stories, and the tie-in simply is this. And the Blain Barber story is interesting. He came back and played much better in the next 3 rounds, but still didn't make it, and he was so far behind the 8 ball. But why are we mentioning it? Because one primary reason, and maybe an ancillary reason from my personal perspective, maybe I'll get to that, but he's your worker guy. He's a golfing peasant like the rest of us, and Lanto and Jimmy Walker now. These are all the guys on the outside looking in, who this new, super tour, as we've always called it, it's not helping these guys. They got to scratch and claw to make a living. Fine, they're not out digging ditches and working in a coal mine. Yeah, true. But still, he mentioned if he's got a family, he's got a lot of kids, he's scratching to make a living, he's going to have to go do something else and the dream is going to die, the golf dream. Yeah. That happens across all sports. We're not saying it doesn't, but and it ties into my tangentially related point, which is there's a group of fans out there, a rather large group of PGA Tour fans who applaud every chance they get. They applaud the struggle. They applaud the fact that struggle is baked into the PGA Tour formula. That you're going to go out there, unless you're a phenom as an amateur and come running out of the gates like a Spieth or a Tiger, certainly, or Jack Nicklaus or any of these superstars. If you're that, that's fabulous. But if you're not that, then you're going to struggle. You're going to work your tail off. And isn't that awesome that golf doesn't give, contracts? There's no guaranteed anything. You don't get drafted and then a contract and then see what you can do. No, you got to earn your way. And that makes golf different than every other pro sport and better than every other pro sport. And that's that group of fans. And I don't see it that way. And probably a lot of you in our audience don't see it exactly that way. What do I mean? Well, yeah, it's great that the PGA Tour is a meritocracy. Sure, we can all agree on that. But it's not great to watch guys struggle to make a living and scratch it out and then celebrate that struggle as if that's a good thing, And
celebrating somebody.
Yeah, you can identify you're struggling in your life. Maybe you lost your job. It's hard to pay the bills. These guys are going through the same thing. I can identify with that. Yeah. That's why it exists, probably from a TV point of view, from the aristocracy's point of view, and all of us competitors kind of are. Yeah, it's competitive like that. Yeah, but there's got to be a middle ground. I don't have an answer for it, but every time I'm seeing these stories and comments all over X and all over different places, YouTube, it's somewhat in our feed here at the Thinking Man Show, it rubs me the wrong way. I don't want to celebrate, Blain Barber failing to keep playing golf professionally. It just doesn't sit well with me. Should he get a guaranteed contract for, $250,000 so he can go play again? I'm not saying that, but minor league baseball, certainly the NFL in America, soccer clubs, it doesn't work like that. There's no other sport that works like that. And I can hear the voices saying, yeah, that's why the PGA Tour is so awesome. Yeah, maybe. I haven't spent hours and hours, nobody's paying me to do so, coming up with a formula that would, preserve what's great about golf and yet, reward people that maybe deserve a chance to have some kind of guaranteed income while they're achieving whatever they can achieve in the sport at a young age. I don't have that formula baked out, but I certainly, and I'll finish here, Darkstar, and turn the floor over to you if you want to add anything on this point. It doesn't allow room to poop all over Live Golf because they give contracts. I mean, I just think that's unfair, unjustified, and not the way that I would choose. And I'm a capitalist. I mean, I am all for that. Do your best, and all the best players should play and make the most money. Yeah, but having a contract is not necessarily a bad thing, and it's how every other sport functions. Go ahead, Darkstar.
Yeah. Well, the big difference there that I see is, unfortunately, in the media, benching somebody, that's good press. They talk about it all the time. It's good ratings. So I think the quarterback for the Jets, obviously New York being the biggest market in the country, he just got benched, and it's a big story. The point is, he's going to get benched. He doesn't have to worry about putting food on his table for the family, and he's going to have another chance. Okay? You're Blain Barber, and you were thinking, this is it. My dream as a pro golfer is over. There's no bench for me. There's no coming back next year. I have to put food on the table, and I'm going to have to find an alternative means of doing that. The second thing about a Blain Barber is, when you look at the proletariat in golf, these are the guys that are looking to catch lightning in a bottle. These are the guys looking for that 1 week, that one shining moment where they win an event, get a couple-year exemption, make maybe the kind of money and pad their PGA retirement. So, yeah, they don't have to worry about going out and finding another job. Typically they always talk about selling insurance or things like that. What these guys had to do in the 70s to, the middle of the road players knew they had to get a second job and things like that. So, it's not just about the dream of winning 18 majors. It's the dream of winning that one event, to say that you won a PGA Tour event. That to me is just as compelling as, seeing Jon Rahm win all 4 majors, or, that type of situation. Rory completing the Grand Slam. To some degree, to see a guy like a Blain Barber catch lightning in a bottle and win an event and set himself up for life, because no, he doesn't have the physical ability of a Rory or a Rahm or things like that. So
we're going to go deeper on Xander Schauffele because there's a whole nother angle to that story. But that'll be on the podcast for our Inner Circle. So we're coming at you today with that story of Xander and what the more complex characteristics of what he said, a little more interesting and intriguing. So we'll see you there. But for now, here, B-Team is out.
Dr. Darkstar's out.
If you're a fan of the show, be sure to subscribe to our new audio podcast, Unfiltered and Off Script. That is where you will get all of our show prep material, wide-ranging conversation on how we come up with these topics, what we choose to zero in on that makes it to the video and the YouTube format, as well as topics that'll never get to YouTube. And there are a lot of those that we like to talk about that'll never make it to YouTube. So look in the description below for the link over to Substack. That's where you can subscribe to the podcast. And thank you again for being a fan.